Session is an extremely realistic skateboarding simulation. At least that's what I've heard. I've never actually skateboarded in real life, let alone gone outside, so I'm basing the realism angle solely on other people's testimony. A controller is all but required to play the game, so make sure you've got one before pulling the trigger. Make no mistake though, this is not Tony Hawk. To steer your board, you use both triggers, and rather than inputting button combos, you control each of your character's legs separately with both of the thumbsticks, manipulating them to pull off tricks. Your left stick is your left leg, and the right stick is your right. The challenge of the game stems from trying to string together these inputs with proper timing to do cool skateboard shit. If that sounds weird, don't worry, Session is extremely customizable. Everything from the control scheme, how inputs are registered, to gravity and truck stiffness can be tweaked to your heart's content, as well as enabling or disabling additional tricks like lip grabs and Caspers. If you're a real gamer, you can play on hardcore, which, on top of everything else you have to keep track of, requires you to manually catch the board to successfully land, or watch your character immediately give up on life as their ankles shatter on impact. The trick system is hard to describe, so to demonstrate, let's do a simple kickflip. First, I need to prime myself to pop or jump. I do this by pulling my right stick back. Then, to initiate the kickflip, I flick the left stick to the left. Now, with proper timing, I'll flick the left stick again to get my left foot to catch the board before landing back on the ground. Seems simple, right? It's not. The timing is very precise, and you can easily be too early or overshoot your window to catch the board, with often disastrous consequences. Balloon that to a full-sized trick list, which is reversed if you're in goofy stance or facing left, and what you're left with is a super complex and incredibly challenging experience, with a learning cliff rather than a curve. On average, it will, no joke, take dozens, if not hundreds of attempts to successfully complete in-game challenges, or challenges you set for yourself. As an example, here's some sped up footage of me trying to grind a rail and then kickflip off it. If you haven't already guessed, Session is difficult to learn, at least initially, but once it clicks, it may as well be magic. The sense of accomplishment you'll feel when you manage to pull off something that would be completely trivial in an arcade skateboarding game is highly addicting. But, it's clearly not for everyone. Looking at the Steam achievements, only 40% of players who have booted the game up have managed to finish the tutorial. While that doesn't necessarily reflect player retention, it's a decent indicator of how many players actually get far enough with the game just to learn its basic mechanics. Unfortunately, Session being hard to learn is not its only issue. There is loads of jank, physics can be wonky, and some features like big drop landing inputs, requiring inputs so you don't eat it when landing from a big jump, actively break the game's respawn mechanic. So if you are playing on hardcore, like the real gamer I know you are, consider disabling this, unless you enjoy watching your character go into cardiac arrest after tripping on their own shoelaces. Worse though, is some of the missions are bugged or clearly lack proper playtesting, tasking you with nailing very precisely timed tricks and then completely failing to register successful inputs, making it very frustrating when you manage to pull something off after dozens, if not hundreds of attempts, just to have the game throw its hands up and say, "Sorry, I wasn't watching. Can you do that again?" This is made even worse if you're a Chad and play with manual catching, since the timing required to achieve some of these challenges is insane. I've even had several instances where having manual catching enabled broke a mission outright. This became so aggravating for me that I stopped trying to complete missions outside of daily challenges and just play the game in the Sandbox, which is fine since I'd argue it's a much more enjoyable way to play anyway. What makes the sandbox of the game so interesting is the fact that you can, at any time, place or manipulate existing props in the environment, allowing you to set up your own challenges with ramps, rails, and whatever other crap you can get your grubby little hands on. This effectively allows you to transform anywhere in the game into your own personal skate park. And as a big fan of the custom parks in the older Tony Hawk games, I absolutely adore that you can do this anywhere in real time in session. Of course, it's not perfect. Placing and rotating objects isn't very precise, but it's more than serviceable for what it's trying to do. Despite its issues, I still think Session is incredibly fun, and arguably the best skateboarding game available today. It's super rewarding to learn new tricks and come up with fun ways to combo them into each other. Every time you boot the game up, you can actively feel yourself getting better at it, so it even emulates learning to skateboard in the real world. At least I'd assume. If nothing else, Session is just a great game to play casually while listening to some tunes. If you're like me, you'll boot the game up thinking you'll play for 30 minutes, and suddenly 2 or 3 hours have gone by. And if that isn't a clear indication that a game is quality, I don't know what is. If you have any interest in skateboarding, or are just a fan of games with incredibly high skill ceilings, then I'd have no problem recommending Session. Except, yeah, we've arrived at what will no doubt be the deal breaker for many. Session's priced at $45 Canadian, which is, high, if you ask me. Lucky for us, the game does go on sale relatively frequently, so if you're on the fence, wait a while and see if you can snag it for around $20 or $25. I'd say that's more than fair. Anyway, that about wraps this up. Now get out there and break a leg. I didn't mean literally.